Catherine. How lovely to see you.
Hi, Margaret.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I always learn so much, and you're such an enthusiastic and passionate teacher. I'd love to have been in your class. And you've come to talk to us about Freckle. I think I might just say, why Freckle, actually? Why Freckle?
Yeah, and Margaret, I think I'll probably start by just really clarifying our rationale for adopting Freckle in the first instance. So Freckle wasn't really something that was on our radar or on our school development plan until we looked at our data post-COVID. So our children had the lockdown in the second term. They came back in the third term. They did their standardized tests, and I am assessment leader in my school and the data analyst in my school. So I'm always looking at the data, mining down into the data, drilling down into the data, and the reading data and the English data really wasn't too badly affected. And probably, as I've said before, I think that Accelerated Reader was perhaps the buoyancy aid that kept the reading afloat, which was fabulous over the lockdowns. And I think that with reading and with literacy and that sort of curriculum, a lot of the learning can be incidental. Yeah. That's not to say that we don't need teachers. I'm not saying that at all. But I think that we are immersed in a world that is biased towards literacy. We're texting all the time. The children are on their iPads and they're seeing digitext. And, we just live in a world that is designed that way. But I think with maths, the children have to learn there are 5 people on the bus sums. There are 5 people on the bus. 3 get off. How many are left? They absolutely have to be taught the strategies, the routines, the procedures, the drills. And as a result of not being professionally schooled for 2 years, fractured schooling for 2 years, the maths data really did take the onslaught of COVID. Right. So we looked at our maths data and we thought, well, what are we going to do? We actually had a whole school meeting in our school hall, and from our teachers that teach our youngest learners up to our teachers that teach the oldest learners, everybody was asking for an accelerated reading equivalent, because they were saying, look what has kept our literacy data alive and kicking. Could we have something similar for maths? And we thought, everything that we do for literacy, we do a lot for maths, but we didn't have that online digital aspect that we do for accelerated reading that you can access at home, that you can involve parents in. And that really becomes a part and parcel and everyday fabric of your classroom. So really it was with a conversation with yourself that we decided that we would take on board Freckle. And Freckle was, in the early stages, we thought perhaps was to help address our COVID deficit. But now that we have it in school and it has been so unobtrusive to teachers and the children love it, yes, it was born out of a data deficit, but it is definitely growing up to be a fully fledged member of our numeracy curriculum. And it's definitely going to join the Hall of Fame of some of our very other prestigious COVID keepers. There won't be too many, but we think that Freckle will be. It has earned its place. So really, we went with Freckle because we wanted, the AR equivalent of literacy. We wanted it for maths. We could see the slump in our maths data, and having spoken with a lot of schools, they're all saying the same, that over the lockdowns, literacy survived. Survived. I would probably go with that word. It survived. It didn't thrive. It survived. And maths was really that really was what was the detriment to its detriment. The lockdown
needed a boost. Really needed something to sort of post it up a bit.
Absolutely.
So obviously Accelerated Reader is about quizzing, and it's about children reading books, and it's that encouragement, and it's having, the carrot at the end of the, I was going to say carrot at the end of the tunnel, but you know what I mean. If you read a book, you can take a quiz. And you've made that sort of comparison. If I was to ask you what Freckle is, it's obviously not Accelerated Reader, it's a maths program. So what would be your sort of description?
Yeah, it's not Accelerated Reader. And if I was putting it very briefly, and if I was being really, really honest, Freckle is the maths that the children want to do. is how I
Wow.
would describe it. Those children that have perhaps in the past been anxious or nervous, who've had some anxiety regarding maths, you can see those barriers break down whenever they're doing their maths through Freckle. So in short, I have described it to my friends, my teacher friends, as Freckle is the maths that your children will want to do. You know, it is what injects positivity and enthusiasm into your classroom. We have used it since September, and I've really used it quite a lot since September because I've really wanted to get to know the program. And I can say that, you know how usually there's that honeymoon period with a new product? Well,
Yeah.
we're still in the honeymoon period, and it's now the 1st of March. The children love it as much as they and are as engaged now on the 1st of March as they were on the 1st of September. So it is, the children smile when they're doing Freckle, and in actual fact, the children cheer when they're doing Freckle. Because we had children, I actually have a video, it might be available on Twitter, I'm not sure, but there's a video of I had an SLT with my principal, and we were working out when we were going to allow Freckle for home use. We needed to make sure all the staff were trained in Freckle before we made it available for home use, so that the parents and the children didn't know more about Freckle than we did. And once we did that, we decided that we could write it into our homework policy, and we did that. So I came in, I was out at an SLT, there was somebody covering my class, and I came back and I said, boys and girls, Mr. Matthews, our principal, has decided that from today we can assign Freckle as homework. And my class erupted, they cheered for homework. You know, it's like a
Yes.
classic oxymoron. They're cheering for homework. They cheered for Freckle, and they absolutely love getting Freckle as homework. The concept behind Freckle is really, really simple. The teacher assigns a task, the children do the task, and the teacher gets feedback, and the children are motivated and engaged. The concept is simple, and I think that's probably part of its success, but the execution is brilliant. The execution is brilliant because it is so user friendly. It's user friendly for teachers, and I'm talking about all professional life phases here. So I'm talking about those teachers that are my age, teachers that are newly qualified, teachers that are maybe working towards retirement. So it's very user friendly for all teachers. You do not need to be tech savvy at all. In fact, I really want to emphasize that, because I think people are probably a bit techno stressed because of the lockdowns, or maybe a bit techno exhausted, and you don't need to be tech savvy at all to operate Freckle. And in fact, I'm really good friends with a colleague, and she said, "Tell them about me. Tell them about me, that computers just die whenever I look at them, and even I can operate it." So she always says, "Use me as your example." So yeah, it's very easy for the teachers to use. It's very easy for the pupils to use. It's exceptionally motivating for the pupils. There's data for teachers to act on. They don't have to do anything to get to the data, to mine down to the data. It can be used for whole class maths. It can be used for small group maths. It can be used for individual children. It can be used for extension work, which is what I use it for a lot. It can be used for homework. It can be used diagnostically, if you're trying to see what a child needs particular help with. It can be used summatively to sum up if you're finished maybe doing algebra and you want to just gauge pupil acquisition of algebra. It can be used for that purposes. It can be used to inform your IEPs for writing your targets and to look for your evidence and things like that. Perhaps further on down the line, we're going to use it to inform our school reports. We're probably a bit early, but yesterday, Monday's always our staff meeting day, and yesterday we were talking about our school report, because for the past 2 years, there has been a slightly condensed report because of the lockdowns. And this year, we're returning to our normal school report, which is a more extensive school report. And as part of that, in the maths area of the school report, there are different categories: number, shape and space, handling data, and so on. And there's a sliding scale where you tick where the child is in terms of above average, well above average, average, and so on. And some teachers were saying things that, like, that tick sometimes causes teachers a bit of, oh, is the child really there?
Yes.
Where do
Yes.
I put this tick? And it's a very important tick. Some parents will dissect that report and will really be wondering why their child is in a tick box in a certain place. So I saw on Freckle that you can actually generate an assessment And you can pick all of those areas, not a lengthy assessment, an assessment for the different areas. The child can go on, you can give them an assessment in those areas, and then you can use the data from that if you need that little bit of security or that little bit of comfort or cushioning as to where to put your tick. So there's another aspect. You could use it also for your school reports. It really does do everything. And in my school, we use it from primary 3 up to primary 7. I also just want to mention at this point that I do feel that to get best use from it, you need to use it alongside Star Maths.
Right.
So when we started using it, we had Star Maths for primaries 5, 6, and 7. And we didn't have it for primary 3 and primary 4. And primary 5, 6, and 7, the teachers were praising Freckle and they were very happy with it. Primaries 3 and 4 liked Freckle, but they felt that there was something missing. And actually what it was, you need to join it up with your Star Maths.
Right.
Once it was connected, once the children were able to connect to the Star Maths, then Freckle was able to know where to level the questions because it is computer adaptive. So it was just a little bit of the jigsaw puzzle was missing. And once the children connected Freckle to their Star assessment, then the picture was definitely complete. And now the teachers are very happy with it. So I don't want, I know school budgets are tight, but personally speaking, I feel that the products it can't really be a standalone product. And whereas Star Maths can be a standalone product, I think Freckle needs the data that comes with Star Maths to feed into it to really get the best for the children.
Well, I think I'm right in saying that now it does actually go as a bundle because that's the feedback we've had. And the fact that Star Maths is so super at sort of identifying the shortfalls or the areas for development. Yes. If it then marries it up with the activities and the maths available in a different concept, in the various different concepts. I mean, you've just said it beautifully, the fact that it does marry it all up and it takes the headache away from the teacher, but also that sense of achievement from the children.
Absolutely. And that the fact that the children know that the work is going to be, not that they'll know this language, but it will be personalized for them. They'll never be intimidated by it, which is fabulous. It won't put them off maths. I just wanted to say how the children answer as well. So I love the idea that the children can bring their book with them and work out if they like to do so. I'm quite an old-fashioned maths worker-outer. I like to have my book with me and my pencil and to do my working out that way. And I tell the children, bring your book with you, do your working out that way. Some you do have a pen and you can write on the screen, and some children like to do that, and that's absolutely fine. You can get a hint, and my children, I had said to them, it's a bit like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, whenever you ask the audience or you phone a friend, and they just looked at me blankly. They didn't know Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. But you can get some hints. There's other things like you can use. There are tools for the children to use on the screen. There's a ruler that they can use. There's shapes that they can have a look at. Maybe there's a question about tessellation. There's shapes there, a question about symmetry. There's wee rubber that they can use. So it's really child friendly. One thing that I thought was really good about it, Margaret, was the fact that every day there is something called fact practice. It's so basic. I mean, I'm not going to tell you anything that's it's not going to be hugely revolutionary, but there's a fact practice, and the children can go on and test in the basic 4 operations: multiplication, division, subtraction, addition, and they get 2 opportunities to do a fact practice per day, and they achieve coins from doing this fact practice, and that's very motivating for them. But the reason I'm mentioning that is because as we are in a recovery curriculum still because of the lockdowns, some children are not au fait in their basic operations, and it is just fabulous that you can keep that ongoing throughout the year as long as you want to.
Yeah.
And recently we send our books home about every 6 weeks for the parents to see. We send home our literacy, our numeracy, and our world around us, and it replaces homework that week actually. And they sit with their children, and they go through the book, and they fill out a little form as part of assessment for learning, and they write down what they found most difficult, what they didn't enjoy doing, what they really loved doing, and what they would love to do more of. And then they make those comments, and they sign it, and their parent signs it. And what was coming back to me was that the children are still finding division difficult. So my fact practice that they can do 2 of per day, it can also be customized. It can be customized as a blanket customization for the whole class, or it can be for individual children. But I did a blanket customization for the whole class, and I took off the three operations and just left division. And that's what we have been doing. So you can really, if you're being told something, you can really act on it very swiftly with no burden to you at all as a teacher. So I just wanted to say that. And I also wanted to point out that with the fact practice, again, which is something so simplistic, lots of schools are having a drive on a back to basics approach with maths. So at the minute in my school, on the school development plan, we're back to number because of the lockdowns. And the fact that you can have your fact practice and have your children from P3 to P7 doing 2 fact practices a day to really, really target and address number is massively, getting those fundamental skills is really, really beneficial.
And I think having that ability to do that without that huge workload of customizing and intervention and differentiation, having that as almost as a click of a button.
Oh, absolutely, Margaret. I think that's the biggest. In my school, I'm so lucky that the climate in my school, there is a real teacher willingness in my school, thank goodness. And I was a little bit concerned. Despite that, I was a little bit concerned about another initiative because teachers are tired with lockdown. And it's an already over incentivized curriculum that we have. We have had an explosion of digital teaching methods, all promising everything. But I have to say, Freckle has earned its stripes with our teachers. It has been welcomed. And really for 2 main reasons. The 2 main reasons are it helps the children, first and foremost. And secondly, it doesn't burden the teacher. So they're the 2 main reasons it has been welcomed.
And I think it's particularly important with maths because I know, when I was teaching, I was definitely much more literacy minded.
Me too.
And so maths was not the also round because I had to teach it. But I do know that I had to think about some of the maths much more when a child came to me and they'd finished what I thought was going to take them 10 minutes. They'd finished it in 3. And I thought, well, I've misjudged that. So to have had something like Freckle to reinforce that learning or to revisit something that they were still a little bit unsure about would have been amazing.
And it's now part of the climate in my classroom that they don't come and tell me they're finished their work. They just go straight on to Freckle now, which is fantastic. And I know that is dependent on how many iPads or Chromebooks or desktops or PCs or whatever you have available. But the children, maybe some schools have a bring your own device to school. But in my class, actually, you don't really hear what's next. I'm finished. They automatically go on to Freckle because the children are so motivated by it. I have to say that I use it day and daily in my classroom, as do most of the teachers in the school. And as I want to really emphasize, it's because there is no demand on the teacher at all. I mean, even if you don't assign the children a task, that still doesn't prevent the child from using it because they can go on and practice. They can go on and do their fact practice. So even if you're absent for a day and there's a substitute teacher in, that substitute teacher doesn't need to know anything about Freckle because the children can go on and fully operate it for themselves to a really high standard. One teacher in my school used the word convenient to describe it. And I think you have a product worth keeping when the word convenient, because there's very little convenient in teaching. And Freckle is actually convenient because it is so user-friendly. The training as well is not demanding at all. We had training through Zoom, and it is not demanding. It was bit by bit. We actually did it through our twilight time. So sometimes to have a staff development day off, you can work twilights, work later in the evening when the children are not there. So we used 2 twilights and did our Freckle training. And although our primary 1 and 2 teachers are not using Freckle, the whole school was trained because I think it's to future-proof staff deployment, teacher deployment in further years.
Yeah.
So, really the teachers in my school from primary 3 to primary 7 could not rate Freckle enough.
Sounds amazing. What I love about the way you're describing it all and your passion, and obviously you've taken the staff with you, although it sounds as though Freckle's done a good job in pulling them along as well, is that the automaticity, I don't know what the word is, the sort of automaticness of the fact that normally you might say, well, go and finish your book. Or, if you're needing to find that odd 5 minutes for a child who really just needs to go and do something, to be able to offer a maths option within that scenario as well, I just think is wonderful, because maths isn't a natural shoehorn always, because it needs instruction, it needs some support, it needs some resources. And a book is so easy, isn't it? You just go and pick your book up. But to have a product like Freckle sitting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the person in the school who is responsible for Accelerated Reader, it does break my heart a little bit whenever I see them on when I see them on Freckle. I kind of feel like they're cheating on my books a little bit. So we'll address that again. But I will say that one of the biggest appeals of Freckle is that it facilitates pace appropriate learning, just as you're talking about. Pupils are not ushered on at a group set pace. I am myself a huge advocate of tailored teaching, of making the system fit the learner as opposed to the other way around.
Absolutely.
And it's great to see the pupils mastering the content at their own stage. It really is. It really does fit with the idea of education being the roadmap of the learner. And this intersection with technology does help drive the pupil to their learning destination.
Yeah.
The differentiation is so easy. And when I talk of differentiation, I think we automatically think of differentiating down, but it's also excellent for differentiating up.
And that's often the more challenge with maths, isn't it? Because I know I was teaching in year 5 and, fractions, it was like, oh, we've got to do decimals now, have we? Okay, right, I'll be there, but it'll just take me a couple of days to get my head back around it. I mean, obviously I knew it, but it's not automatically there if you haven't touched it.
Yeah, and also the differentiation is so subtle. So if you are differentiating up, that's great to be visible about that. But if you are differentiating down, there is sensitivity required, and Freckle has that inbuilt. It's so subtle. In fact, it's completely invisible. The children, there isn't a big, as I always talk about, there's not a big pink flashing neon light above somebody's head saying you're different, you're weaker, you're not as smart. Because I mean, the other day we were doing decimals, and I was able to assign a year 5 piece of work, a year 6 piece of work, a year 4 piece of work, a year 3 piece of work, all within the same classroom, and nobody knew that I had done that. And it took me a grand total of about 3 minutes to do it as well. So
amazing.
It's just it's fantastic. That's only just one example. You can do that with decimals, fractions, percentages, whatever it happens to be. I've described it as a big warm blanket for my weaker children. They feel protected and they feel looked after. They know that the work will be right for them, and they know that they'll not have the glare of their peers seeing the different worksheet. And children, without even knowing it, can be judgmental, even just
completely.
So those children, they feel protected by Freckle.
And I think that's really important, again, particularly for maths, because there is a culture where somehow it seems acceptable to say, oh, I'm not really good at maths. You'd never say that about reading. You'd never say that in a million years. And yet somewhere it's all right to say, oh, well, math's not my subject. It is your subject. Every time you open your mouth, you're thinking something mathematical, even if it's a subtle sort of hint to it. And if we're able to embed maths in the way that you're describing it and not have your differentiated groups around the clock, there's the yellow table. They know they're on the yellow table, don't they? And there's always that element of, well, I've got to group you somehow because I'm going to be working with you, and there's no point in me mixing you all up. So Freckle ticks that box in spades as well, doesn't it?
It definitely does. The pupils just love it. That's the word they use, that they love it. They properly love it. The e-learning and the people motivation link is strong. They're motivated by their desire to collect coins because they get to buy new clothes and accessories for their avatar, and they just love doing that. They love customizing their avatars. There's also the opportunity for pupils to set their own goals and their own targets for the week, and they love doing that as well. So I just wanted to end by saying that that's the word that my children use to describe it. We love it. We just love it. In Northern Ireland, we talk about we just love it. We just love it. We just love it. And because I asked them today in preparation for this, I said, boys and girls, what will I say about Freckle? What will my final statement be about Freckle? And they said, just tell Margaret that we just love it.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear. And I tell you what's even lovelier, actually, Catherine, is that what I didn't say at the beginning, that this is one of 3 sessions that we're going to be doing around Freckle. So I just love the fact that in 2 weeks' time, we're going to talk about Freckle some more. And we're going to have my colleague, Francis, is coming to join us. And so we can talk about how you just love it and how we want to just hear from you again, because, you know, you do bring it alive. And obviously you do. You're a teacher and you're a passionate, enthusiastic and empathetic teacher. But to hear you articulate the benefits and the attributes and the way in which it's being used, not just in your classroom, but in the whole school with children through all the abilities, and cheering when they get it for homework. I mean, really, what more could we ask for? Thank you so much for your dedication, really, and for your hard work.
You're welcome, Margaret. Thank you. It was lovely to talk to you as always.
While Freckle's mission is to empower all students, we have always known we can't do that without you, the educator. Educators committed to the responsibility of providing a quality learning experience where each student feels seen and has their needs met. Freckle is a practice tool directly inspired by the work and dedication of educators like you. We enable K-12 teachers to provide differentiated practice in math and ELA that balances fun with learning. Freckle facilitates student engagement by providing work at the just right level and motivates students to reach their full potential.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Renaissance Space podcast, please check out the Education Joining the Dots podcast from our colleagues at GL Assessment. Thank you.